Morgan Zanotti. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Morgan, you've had quite an interesting career path before co-founding Primal Kitchen. I'd love to learn about that journey from your early career and the whole year or maybe a decade of surf travel type of adventures. And how did we go from that world and come up with the idea of Primal Kitchen and get that started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Chicago. I went to school at University of Colorado, went in as a psychology major, realized how much science I had to take, switched to accounting because math was always very easy for me. Graduated at University of Colorado, went on to have my first job was I was an accountant. I lasted 10 months, was super bored, quit my job to waitress at my aunt and uncle's resort in northern Wisconsin. That's kind of like this real life dirty dancing type resort. You can imagine my parents were like super thrilled at 22 and I was like, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to waitress for the summer and then I'm going to be living abroad. So I studied abroad in Australia and just loved the experience of like living in a different culture and really wanted to go to Argentina. So I was supposed to go on a 6-month trip to Argentina. It turned into like a 2.5-year trip that culminated with me moving to Hawaii and getting my yoga certification there. But I surfed. I spent 315 hours on a bus everywhere from Buenos Aires to Ushuaia, which is the southern tip of South America, all the way up to Colombia. I lived in Mexico, Costa Rica, learned how to surf in Ecuador, just kind of did the Vagabond thing for 2.5 years. Bought the domain name surfyogaecuador.com. I was gonna like set up surf yoga camps, but ended up coming home having really bad reverse culture shock because man, it's much easier for me to like acclimate to the excitement of a new culture than it is to kind of return home and figure out where do I belong? What am I doing with my life? Everyone else has been doing this thing. I've been doing this different thing. So I ended up at an advertising agency as an account exec, managed the Frito-Lay account and SC Johnson and just some other like big clients like that. But while I was in South America, I'd had kind of my own health journey, if you will. I met a girl from California. I had never been to California. That's where I live now. I had never been, and she turned me onto this like standard process cleanse. This was a time when like Food Inc. was a documentary that you could actually see in the movie theater. I got really into that. And Michael Pollan's In Defense of Food was kind of like a big book, if you will. Skinny Bitch was really popular, if anyone remembers that book. But yeah, so it just kind of like kicked me off on this almost personal obsession with just hacking my own health, if you will, and ended up doing the advertising agency thing for 2.5 years. And then I moved to California and went to run marketing for a brand called Kavita, which was a sparkling probiotic drink. I was there when they were in a garage in Oxnard, like sub 10 million in revenue, structuring their buyout with PepsiCo. Like a very exciting young entrepreneurial time to be there. It was a short stint for me at Kavita. And then I met Mark Sisson, who is the founder of Primal Kitchen, my partner at Primal Kitchen. And he was blogging and he was really like blogging before blogging was cool and doing paleo before paleo was cool. So he had this idea for a food company. Kavita sponsored this event he did. He was selling supplements direct to consumer online, writing books and self-publishing books, and then posting a blog post every day about like health and wellness and food and stuff. And Mark sponsored this event and I knew of him because I followed his blog. I didn't need to go to the event, but I could have sent my marketing manager, but I really wanted to meet Mark. So I went and I ended up giving him and his wife a ride home to their hotel at the end of the night. And then like he called me 2 months later and said like, hey, I want to launch this food company. Do you think you could help? So I came on in a couple years before we launched the mayonnaise and just worked on like all the things, naming the brand. Our first meeting, Mark was going to call the brand Primal Blueprint. And I was like, that's a terrible name for a food. You should call it Primal Kitchen. And he was like, oh, great, this meeting was worthwhile. And then here we are. So I was kind of like employee zero, co-founder in the business with him. And we grew Primal Kitchen over 3.5 years, sold it to Kraft Heinz for 200 million almost 6 years ago. And I stayed on up until last spring, really like in the day-to-day operations of the business. So that was like a really long-winded answer, but there you have it.
I mean, no, you fast forwarded quite a bit. It's an incredible story. I do want to rewind a little bit, though.
Sure.
So what was the main, I guess, angle behind Primal Kitchen when it was starting? Was it let's use avocado oil as the main ingredient, and just like because it's so healthy and something like that?
Yeah, I think at the time, like right now, I would say, oh, there's a lot of like chatter about seed oils, but then there was like less chatter. It wasn't as like mainstream of a topic, but the people who knew they didn't want to eat canola oil were very passionate about it, right? So there was the paleo movement was in its like kind of in its glory. Like you went to Paleo FX, this conference in Austin, Texas, and people were like walking around barefoot and just it was like I don't know, kind of the heyday of like everyone was doing Whole30. They were like experimenting keto, like keto it kind of evolved into keto. And these sort of just like elimination diets had become really popular. I think people could very quickly notice like a change in how they felt. So they spread like pretty rampantly. I think they were just successful for people and popularized. So we launched Primal Kitchen under the premise that like Mark really wanted to be like Paul Newman. He's like, I love Paul Newman, but I go to the grocery store and I buy Newman's own salad dressing and it's disgusting. It has a blend of canola, soybean, sunflower oil. There's added high fructose corn syrup. What is all these gums in there? Like there was nothing like clean or acceptable that Mark wanted in his kitchen. And there were a lot of other people that felt that way, but no one had really done anything disruptive in salad dressings or mayonnaise or any of these kind of like oil heavy categories, if you will. So we first formulated this product, this golden Carolina Gold barbecue sauce, and Mark was like, I'm obsessed with this stuff. We have to launch it. And I looked at the ingredient statement, the formulation, and I was like, Mark, this is like 28% maple syrup. There's like 16 grams of sugar and 2 tablespoons. Like, we can't launch this, right? So I think we hung on to like a few key macro trends that we proliferated through a few categories, which were no seed oils, no added sugar. Like, you'd be shocked there's actually like sugar in most mayonnaise on the market, which like, why is there sugar in mayonnaise? Like, we don't need sugar in mayonnaise. And then like no gluten, dairy, soy, etc. So all of our product line to this day still holds true to that mission. Like, we don't have any seed oils in anything. We were the first people to put avocado oil in a condiment. So we launched our mayonnaise first and then expanded into salad dressings. And then we took kind of the unsweetened popularity of our products and applied that to ketchup, and the brand just kind of grew from there.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep drilling in the early days. Yeah. So what made you so confident in your feedback? How did you learn some of the things that you're describing to me that this wouldn't work? Did you learn that at the advertising agency or Frito-Lay or at the beverage company that you were working at? Or did you do research? If so, how did you do it?
No, I'm like the anti-MBA. There's like no business plan Mark and I worked on. We were very just like quick and dirty, intuitive. It was a very quick and dirty, intuitive strike mission, if you will. So we kind of like, we were like, look, we don't want these things. Like Mark and I, we don't want sugar. We don't want, and Mark had a blog at that point with 300,000 newsletter subscribers. So like there were people commenting. There was people following along with Mark's movement who had read his book and said like, hey, I cut out the grains and I feel so much better or whatever, right? So he had an open discourse with consumers that was very valuable. But I would say for us, it was really like we created a product we wanted. We set the price point based off the margins we needed in order to stay in business and not have to raise money for the rest of our lives. And then we said, what's the smallest amount of product we can run in one run? We'll test this in the marketplace. People either want it at the price we can sell it at in order to have a real legitimate business, or they don't. And if they don't, we'll close up shop. And if they do, we keep going. So our first run was like a $36,000 run of 18,000 jars of mayonnaise, if you will. So for us,
avocado
that was like 3,000
mayonnaise?
cases. What'd you say?
Avocado oil mayo?
Avocado oil mayonnaise, yeah.
Yeah. No sugar.
No sugar, yeah. Really like 5 simple clean ingredients, cage-free organic eggs, avocado oil, sea salt, rosemary extract, like super, super clean. So we ran the run and we were like, if we sell this out in a year, if we can get rid of this amount of product in a year before the shelf life expires, like that would be good. And we sold it out online in 1 week. So then we were kind of like, okay, we're on to something here. But then we're like, well, maybe it was just the launch hype. So we ran the next production run, we ran twice as much. And then that sold out in like 3 weeks. And then the next production run, we ran twice as much. And that sold out in 5 weeks. And we really had like operated by accident, just in time inventory the whole first year of the business. Like every time we would up our run, we would run out of mayonnaise. And then like we'd be like, okay, we're out of inventory on like Thursday, but we're running next week Wednesday, so like it'll be fine. We can bridge the 5 days. It was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy.
Incredible. I'm kind of thinking about, could this have worked if you didn't have somebody like Mark with a 300,000 person email list?
You know, that's a good question. I think yes. I think we sold out our first run online, which was helpful in just testing the idea quickly. But the reality is we launched in February 2nd of 2015, and we were in Whole Foods in June. And I asked Mark this in year one. I was like, Mark, 100 people walk through the front door of Whole Foods. How many of them know you? And we both kind of came to the agreement, like maybe 2 out of 100 knew who Mark Sisson was. And our velocities, which means how many units, like how fast your product is being pulled off the shelf, were really high, like week 1. So like, I think Mark helped tremendously in just like testing the product, our online sales, all of that stuff I think was super helpful, and just credibility and authenticity behind the brand. But like, do I think the product would have worked without Mark? Like, I really do, because it wouldn't have been as easy. It certainly wouldn't have been as fun. I love Mark. And it wouldn't have probably maybe been as authentic, but the product sold. Like the first week we were on shelf, we were moving like 9 units per store per week, and average for the category was 6. And on promotion, we were moving, it was insane. Like we got taken into the Rocky Mountain region of Whole Foods, and our promotion movement was like 30 units per store per week, and normally they see like 12 for a brand on sale. So we had really strong retail support without really doing anything. I mean, Mark and I went out to like the Pearl Street Whole Foods in Boulder and did a little like book signing or something, but like really the product was kind of selling itself off shelf, because I think it's a big category. Mayonnaise is a $2 billion category. There had been no disruption. No one had done a better for you. No one had really done anything there. Sir Kensington's was there. They were a little bit disruptive, but kind of playing a different game. So I think we just had the right product at the right time that people wanted. I think you really got to launch something that's like means a lot to a very passionate group of people. I think that's where like the magic happens.
Yeah. So you didn't have DTC presence? Was it all retail in the beginning?
No, we did. We did have D2C presence. So Mark had an online store. So we were selling like 3 packs of mayonnaise for $27 direct to consumer. And then we launched early with an online retailer called Thrive Market. They're kind of like, have you heard of Thrive Market? It's kind of like Costco prices, but you don't have to buy in bulk. And on like, at the time, this was like before Instacart, right? So like you could place your big bulk orders, get great pricing on like these really like organic, healthy specialty products. And they would be there, 5 days later or something like that. It's a little bit of a different world now I mean, I'm a mom of 3. I'm like 5 days. Like I can't even wait till tomorrow. Like I just got to get on Instacart. Someone's going shopping for me this afternoon. Like I got to get dinner on the table. I don't know. It was a different time. But half of our sales for the first like 2 years were Thrive Market and D2C. We had a lot of, it can be a slower ramp up in retail. We approached it very like organically.
Yeah. So you set yourself a goal of selling the first batch in a year. You sold it in a week or a few weeks.
A week,
so,
yeah.
And then a few more runs. Those were also successful. So now you're feeling confident. What was next? What was the next line of
so
products?
we did this like stupidest thing ever. We're so crazy, but I had support from people who were working for Mark on like his blog and stuff. Like there were people who I did all of our package design in-house with an amazing graphic designer who still works for Primal today. I had a shipping department if I needed to send samples, but I didn't have any like salesperson or marketing person who was working on Primal Kitchen. So it was kind of just me and Mark for the first year. And we launched, like I said, the mayonnaise in February. December of that year, we rolled out with a collagen bar, a bottle of avocado oil, and 2 salad dressings. So we expanded into 3 more categories at the end of that year. I would like highly recommend not doing that with one person. I was like incredibly stressed out. But yeah, we took kind of what worked in mayonnaise and expanded it into other categories. So salad dressing was kind of an obvious next stop. It's a heavy canola oil category, right? And no one had come in and really cleaned up that aisle either. So we made salad dressings with avocado oil.
Yeah. And then how many years after that things started getting crazy? The first year it was just the 2 of you. And then at one point it got overwhelming, right?
I mean, it was just the two of us in the sense of people who was like strategically dedicated to Primal Kitchen, but we had like team members, we had customer service, and we had support. But we hired my best friend from like growing up, who I've known my whole life. She came on as a marketing director in 1 year in, and then we hired the sales guy, Alex, from General Mills, who came on, oh God, when did he come on? Like maybe 18 months in. And those two things were just like really helpful for Mark and I's sanity. You know, we were tag teaming. Like I would be like, we have a Publix meeting the same day as a Costco meeting, and Mark would fly to Publix and I flew to Costco. You know, we were kind of like, yeah, we were all over the place. So, so yeah, then we built out the team very slowly. And not like, Anna was working, this is our VP of marketing. I mean, she was working at the University of Minnesota. Before that, she had worked for a tractor company called Toro in marketing communications. So this wasn't like, I see people a lot launch a food company and they're like, all right, I'm going to hire like the CMO who came from Procter and Gamble. And I'm like, this is going to be a disaster. You know what I mean? Like, you really need to hire, I think, people who can live at the face of the business you're at. And oftentimes I see people hiring like really high up strategic folks who are used to having like a $25 million budget and 20 people under them. And that's just like a different management skill set than like being in the nitty gritty, making fast decisions, knowing, your job at the beginning is really like, what lawyer do I want advice from? What accountant do I need in place? What broker am I going to bring on to partner with the business? Who's going to be my first hire? Like assembling your kind of like team, I think is really challenging and just super important, in what you spent like half of the first year of business focusing on. So yeah, we kind of built it out that way.
What were some of the growth channels that worked really well for you? What are some of the marketing hacks or strategies that you were employing that were kind of driving exponential growth for Primal Kitchen?
Yeah, so we, this was in 2015, so you like probably won't even believe this, but no brands were really on like Instagram. So our Primal Kitchen's Instagram now has like 1 million followers, which sounds like nothing. Everyone has 1 million followers these days. But for a brand, we were like really early on the Instagram game. So we did a lot with influencers before they were called influencers. Like there were a lot of people who were inspired by Mark to start posting their recipes online. So Instagram was really like food heavy in the early days and very like, paleo blogger, paleo girl, paleo primal, whatever. And those people really helped us like spread the message about Primal. So we had an affiliate program and then just like influencer marketing. We sent quarterly boxes. We managed direct like 500 influencers. We sent them free product every 3 months, and they shared about us. And that was kind of, that was kind of like the magic sauce in the beginning. Also, our partnership with Thrive Market was really fortuitous. So Thrive Market had launched right around the same time we did, and they came to us and said, can we be the exclusive seller of Primal Kitchen? And we were like, sure, because nobody else wants to buy it yet, right? Like it coincided with like our launch. Like, we're like, sure, if we can sell it on our website, like you can have it also at Thrive Market. And they were like, great. And they paid for a lot of PR to launch Thrive Market. And we got a lot of free PR out of it. They had all these articles in like, big publications that would say, Primal Kitchen launches exclusively with Thrive Market, like Mark Sisson's new mayonnaise, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of the messaging that Thrive Market was paying for included us. And we got kind of like the benefit of that, I would say. We gave away like 3,000 jars of mayonnaise or something out of our first run. So leading up to our launch, I did this like Hold the Canola Twitter campaign. And if you like retweeted or hashtagged Hold the Canola, you could like win a free jar of mayonnaise. And I remember there was like someone who tweeted, enough with this Hold the Canola. Like, I'm so annoyed with this campaign. And I felt like I had really made it as a marketer because I annoyed someone on the internet because they had like heard about the Hold the Canola campaigns. But, it was like a different day, right? It's 2024. You can't get someone to post about you for under 10K, it seems like these days. But I think finding like what's up and coming and being first on a certain platform or whatever is really beneficial for brands. We've seen certain brands these days take off. They were early on TikTok, or certain brands that were early on Amazon, or whatever. So I think we just kind of like hit that at the right time. And then it's like retail is just like pretty block and tackle. Like there's not a whole lot you can do. Like you can have good branding, good packaging, get the right shelf presence. And then there's some programs you can do, but it's really just about like standard processes and procedures. Like you need to deliver your inventory on time. You need to have the right amount of inventory. You need to have the right distributors and brokers in place. You need to have the right promotional calendar. You're going to put your product on sale 4 times a year. Like I see so many brands who like get into Whole Foods and they're not even like setting up a promo calendar with Whole Foods, and then they wonder why they don't perform and they get kicked out. Like velocities are too low and they're off the shelf 12 months later. You know, you gotta pay attention to retail, but you don't need to be that out of the box. It's kind of like the programs are there. Find like someone who's done it before and just do the things that everybody does, and you can see if your product resonates in retail or not. It's gotta taste good, stand out on shelf. People are making they're making a shopping decision with, 2 seconds, 3 kids screaming in the grocery cart, right? Like how fast can you impact someone to trial your product? So those were big things for us.
So how did the acquisition conversation come about? That was pretty quick, right? 4 or 5 years into the start of the business?
Yeah. So food is like notoriously low margin. Like I don't know if you saw, but Siete Foods sold last week to PepsiCo for $1.2 billion. We kind of like launched at the same time as them. So RX Bar, which sold to Kellogg for $600 million, Vital Proteins, which sold to Nestle. And we were all like baby brands together. We were all kind of in this like paleo sandbox growing up together. But I would say for us, we knew we wanted to sell the company. So I think if you're going into food because you think you want to run a business that you're going to like make a lot of money from while you own it, like you've got another thing coming because margins are razor thin. It's a very low margin, hard to compete business when there's some of these other like big guys in the marketplace, if you will. So we knew we wanted to sell it one day. And Mark said to me in February of 2015, if we could just grow this thing and sell it for 30 million, I'd be happy. And then the next year he's like, if we could sell it for 50 million, I'd be happy. And then the next year it was 100, and then we sold it for 200. So we always kind of like knew that we wanted to do that. And I think that was actually really helpful for us because we made business decisions backwards based off what the end goal was. I also meet a lot of entrepreneurs who will be like, I don't know, maybe I want to pass it down to my kids and maybe I want to sell it. And I'm like, well, that's fine, but figure that out and then make your strategic decisions because it's 2 different playbooks, really. It really does drive some differences in how you run the business. So I think having an idea of kind of where you want to go helps filter decisions through.
What did it feel like the next day after the acquisition closed?
It was crazy, kind of like a little surreal. So we signed the deal on, I was 32 weeks pregnant when we sold the company. So we did like, there's a whole process you do when you sell your company. You like hire an investment banker and you have to do these meetings. And there's this part called management presentations where everyone who's put in a bid and said how much they would buy you for and they're interested in buying you comes and you do like an 8-hour meeting each day with the different interested parties. And I was 32 weeks pregnant when we did those 4 in a row 8-hour meetings with the interested parties. And then I had my first son on November 6th and we signed the deal with Kraft on November 28th. So I think just like there's a few emotional points of selling the business, right? Like getting the bids, you're just like, wow, people like are actually want to buy the business. And then actually signing with Kraft was a big deal. And then we didn't close, like money doesn't get wired until it passes like SEC and all of that. So that happened January 3rd of 2019. It was crazy. You're kind of like a little bit in denial. I think like we had the deal signed, but we were like, there's no way this is going to happen. Like this will fall through or something, right? like there's no way. And then, and then it happened. Our deal got leaked to the press. So Mark and I we were the only really shareholders of the business. There were a few, like some really small investors that owned 5% of the business, but Mark and I owned the other 95% of it, Mark being the lion's share owner of the business at the time in which we sold. Yeah, that's also like super rare in the food industry. But we bonused every single person who worked for us. And we obviously didn't tell them we were selling the company as we were going through the process because who knows, like it could have fallen through, might not have gotten a deal done. We didn't talk about it with the team. We didn't need anyone like stressing about that. We needed them like to be worried about just the actual running of the business because Mark and I couldn't do a lot of that and sell the company at the same time. So the story got leaked to like the Chicago Tribune. Kraft is headquartered in Chicago. And so Mark and I, like, all of a sudden there was like news. And so we had been talking for like 2 years about how much bonus we wanted to give people. And then we went through a spreadsheet of everyone who worked for us and just kind of like, how long did you work for us, impact on the business, and, called everyone, Mark and I personally, and said, hey, we made the decision to sell the company to Kraft Heinz. We, as a thank you for your help in getting here, like, here's a bonus. And some of the bonus amounts were like life-changing amounts of money, like obscene amounts of money. Everyone was crying. I mean, Mark and I were crying on every call. Every employee was crying on every call. It was really like my favorite day of running the business. It was a cool day.
Amazing. So
yeah.
Normally, Morgan, I'd want to ask you about knowing what you know now. I mean, it seems like you've been through 20 years of entrepreneurial experience in like 5 years, condensed, with an incredible exit. Congratulations to you. It's very impressive. And I'd say, knowing what you know now, if you wanted to start another business, what would you do? But you're actually doing it. So what is the new thing? Let's hear about it.
Yeah, so I actually did step down from my day. I stayed on at Kraft Heinz for 5 years after we sold the company, which is like also unheard of. Nobody does that. But they were like great. They really left us alone, even up until the spring when I had another hell yes idea and told them, look, like, move me into a consulting role. I'm working on this other thing on the side. They were super supportive. So I'm in an advisory role with Primal still. And then I'm also in an advisory role with a private equity fund. And then it's called an executive in residence program, an EIR program, but that's been really fun. And then I'm working on a little brand baby that I want to test in the market now. So it's in the beverage space, which is a category that is impossible. I mean, it's one of the hardest categories in the grocery store, and I know that. So it seems a little bit almost.
Is that the hell yes idea you were talking about?
Yes, this would be my hell yes idea.
I want to understand that. How did you get to the hell yes idea?
Oh, yeah. How did I get to that? So, I mean, I think I don't know. I'm a person who's always like circulating business ideas, right? Like in my 20s, I wanted to launch a sunscreen, like a mineral-based sunscreen that was pink with astaxanthin in it. I wanted to launch a baby formula, an infant formula. There's always been like ideas surrounding, but nothing I ever felt like, oh, I really have to go do this. And then I knew I wanted to go do something else, but I just didn't have my idea like for a long time. Like I had been thinking about it since we sold the company, right? Like for 5 years, truly. And there were periods where like just inspiration just like wasn't striking. Like I was pregnant. We were living in Florida during COVID. And I was like, I just feel like taking a nap and reading a romance novel. And there's like no part of me that's like motivated right now. But I know myself, like I've been through enough of these cycles to know that like, just enjoy the time when you're just lazy, because then you will become crazy again and, be wanting to kind of like stay up all night working on your new thing and whatever. So yeah, the idea came, I was aware of an ingredient in the marketplace, and I was actually at a lunch with some friends who have a sparkling water business. And I was saying to them, you should just add protein to your sparkling water. And then I was like, no, I'm going to add protein to sparkling water. That's genius. So yeah, that's what I'm working on, is a protein water, if you will. But probably with a flavor profile a little bit more like a Poppy or an Olipop, like a little bit more like a full flavored soda with only 2 grams of sugar and 12 grams of protein in it.
And the protein water concept is exciting to you. Is it because of the potential market opportunity, or is there like personal passion or health reasons behind it?
I think all the above. I think protein is definitely having a moment. I don't know if you feel like that, but for me, like my girlfriends were doing like the master cleanse when I was at Kavita. It was like maple syrup, cayenne, pepper, water with lemon in it. And then everyone was doing like Whole30, these like restrictive diets. And I did like this challenge with my friends called like the 5 plants challenge, but it was basically like you can eat whatever you want. Like forget these restrictive diets. It's like too much of a mind fuck. Sorry if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast, you can beat me out. But it's too hard for women who have been like, we've been trying to lose weight our whole lives. Like I would say like 80% of women have, right? Even if we don't even have any weight to lose. And it's just like, you know, one day you gotta eliminate carbs, the next day you gotta eliminate calories, the next day you gotta eliminate fat. Like we've been through all these phases. You wander around all day thinking about what you can't eat and trying to eat less, and it kind of makes you a crazy person. So I had a naturopathic doctor tell me to try and eat protein every 2 hours. And when I went through that, where I was trying to eat something every 2 hours, I like didn't want to eat. I was like, oh my God, like talk about the easiest way to turn off your hunger hormones is like, and also I think just eating protein every 2 hours, you're very satiated, and you're just not hungry. So I think protein is rightfully so having a moment. I don't think there's really any other, I don't know, food group that's been as well studied as protein has, just on like, you know, maintaining lean muscle mass, its importance as we age, metabolic health, impact on your appetite through the rest of the day if you have protein for breakfast. Like it is so ridiculously well studied with so many well studied benefits, that I think it's just like having a moment, rightfully so. And I do think, of course, there's a market opportunity. I wouldn't launch anything if I didn't think there was a market opportunity. And I'm also just personally like, I'm 40, I'm probably going to be perimenopausal in the next 10 years. And I'm trying to get my 100 grams of protein a day. And I'm finding that that's really hard to do as a mom with 3 kids. So this seemed like a fun solution for me.
It is hard to get protein. I tried to do a high protein diet and I was always coming up short.
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
Shockingly hard.
Yeah. So we came up with our protein water idea. Now, how long will it take for us to go from idea to launch? What are some of the things that we have to do?
It'll probably be a year for me. I was hoping faster, but like, you know, you have to find a good lawyer and set up your company the right way, depending on kind of how you want to exit it. We built in like, we're starting the company with shares of myself and my husband, and also some shares in an irrevocable trust for my kids. So they're going to be like silent owners in the business that hopefully they never find out they were owners in the business. But I think just some of that like planning is important to do up front. Definitely like look into that. And then, you know, you got to get the name. You got to make sure the name is not trademarked in your category. And you can search USPTO. What?
Did you get the name yet?
I do have a name. I'm going to call it Way with 2 A's, WAAY. So I'm throwing up a landing page with a coming soon for more info on the product at drinkway.com. Yeah. So I'm excited about that. And then it's really like branding, packaging, and finding who's going to make your product. And there's like lots of manufacturers who can make your product. I'm a big fan of like who can make my product with the smallest MOQ. And MOQ
Where do you find those people?
I mean, through my network, a lot of people, just talking to people. But I found those people when I had no network. I mean, you got to talk to people. Like, you got to call someone, and when they say, like, no, we can't do it, instead of being like, thanks, bye, you're like, okay, do you know anyone who can? And they're like, oh, yeah, you know, there's actually a co-man in Vermont that's small, and they might take on your project, and they refer you to someone. It's just like a never-ending game of, like, can you help me? If not, do you know who can? Can you help me? If not, do you know who can? I feel like it's a lot of that. Yeah.
And leading up to launch, are you looking to build a community like, you know, Mark's 300,000 person email list, or are you gonna, I mean, in your case, you can do PR because you have a story of the person who sold her company for $200 million is starting a new thing, is something that can be picked up, but a lot of people won't have that luxury. you know?
I don't think a lot of people even care about that, to be honest. Like, I don't think I'll get that much PR with that. Maybe I'm just like have imposter syndrome, but I feel like, I think that, you know, you can launch with influencers. Like you know, you could have people who invest in your company who have a following. Like I see a lot of people do that. You can always bring on like a celebrity partnership. I'm not like the biggest fan of that, but I think that's certainly something people utilize. Or for me, like, yes, I would love to have a community. I don't really have a community. I'm like pretty anti-social media. I have like all accounts deleted from my phone. My cousin manages my own social media, but that's like my one insecurity. I'm like, there's like other people doing similar stuff to what I'm doing, and like the only thing they have that I don't is a following. Like it would be great if there was like an audience to launch to, but that just hasn't been like a priority for me where I'm at in my life. My kids are little. I don't want to be like on my phone even in front of my kids really, and I find social media super addicting, and so deleted it all and choose to be addicted to romance novels and reading my Kindle instead. It's just a healthier place for me to be. But really, beverage is like a retail play. Like, you know, I think the following comes in super helpful if you're selling like a supplement direct to consumer or something like that. That can be like tremendously helpful. But liquid is heavy and bulky to ship, and beverage is just like probably a little bit more of a retail play than maybe some other categories in the grocery store. Mm-hmm. But a following, of course, would help. I don't have one.
Morgan, final two-part question.
Yeah.
What are the two problems giving you a headache right now? And what are the top two priorities you're focusing on prior to your launch?
Okay, two problems giving me a headache right now is like so easy. I have 3 boys at home under the age of 6. So like literally giving me a headache would be the lack of sleep issue that comes with being a new mom and even a mom of just like toddlers. That's no joke. So I think I've always been a good sleeper my whole life, and I'm like just really struggling with like middle of the night wake ups and then my inability to go back to sleep. That would be one. Number 2 would actually be my migraines. That's like my biggest health issue that I'm like trying to work through. That's gotten a lot worse since I've had kids. But yeah, those are 2 that just pop into my mind that I'm just constantly like, how do I get rid of these migraines and how do I get more sleep? They're probably tied. And what was the other part of the 2-part?
Two priorities you're focusing on prior to launch.
2 priorities I'm focusing on prior to launch. Do they have to be business related?
No.
No. Well, I would say one is just something we didn't really have the luxury to do last time because we launched Primal Kitchen out of a business Mark already had, but like setting things up right for if there is a future exit for like both from like a estate planning and also from just like a tax planning perspective. I've spent a lot more time on like intellectual property, patents, trusts, structure for, you know, tax benefits than I maybe would have prior. So I think that's something that you just like have to do before that I'm doing a lot of now. And then the second thing would be like what we talked about before, but I really think just like getting the right people on board. And I don't even mean like co-founders or even full-time employees, just even the right like legal advice. Like I ran into a little bit of a legal issue already and like talked to 4 different lawyers and got 4 entirely different opinions. And they don't present them as opinions, right? They're like, here's what I would do. This is the law. This is how I would approach it. You talk to someone else and they're like, oh, I would do Y and I would do it this way. And someone else is like, no, you don't need it. Like, so just like, I think uncovering all the stones that are layered with all of the different opinions and figuring out kind of who are the right people to have around the table is definitely like where I'm at right now. Like who knows beverage better than me, who knows all these things better than me, and how do I get them like motivated to be on board?
Morgan Zanotti, thank you for sharing your journey with me.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was so fun.